Welcome back to the Cottage Farmstead. My name is Nathan Vanette, and today we're going to show you how we move our cows. It is slightly different than conventional farmers, in particular during the rainy season, which is right now. We've been going from like 5-inch rain events over the last week. We've had another 4.5 inches, so everything is very soggy. So we don't have the right equipment to go over the soggy ground. We do have a tractor, but rather than compromise compaction, we do everything by hand in events like this, just to ensure that we are maximizing the health of the land for the long term rather than looking at a short-term efficiency. In particular, we also view our management with the cows as a very important element to the health of the land. A lot of farmers will just have like a sacrifice zone that they end up being like, okay, it's okay, they'll just trample this and make it a muck pit. But the problem is that's oftentimes when you cultivate different types of bacteria and infections which can affect their hoofs, their mouth, their eyes, and that's something we definitely do not want to do. So we'll show you what we do to remedy that particular risk. For efficiency, so we don't have to go back to where our electrical energizer is plugged in, we have these yellow handles which pass the current through, and this is insulated so I can touch that without being shocked. That way I can disconnect the wire, this is the one that's around the cows, without having to completely turn off the whole system, saving some time while making it very convenient for moving them around without having to gingerly step over wires for risk of getting shocked. So when we're ready to move the cows, I try to get them into a tight paddock where I can run an electrical wire. That way I can disconnect the whole entire larger perimeter area, take all those posts, set it up into our next section. So one thing I've liked for this is a wheelbarrow. I can position hay in it and it acts like an attractant just to get the cows in there. Very low stress, and it helps just to make it easier to manage and move them. For the most part, they move themselves, so as you can see, Nifty 50's already eager to get some tastings, and No Tag won't be far behind. So we do have a fairly intensive management system here. We're moving the equipment every 3 days in particular. The reason we do that is the prevention of parasites or being overly impactful on the land. With the rainy event that we had to go a couple of additional days. But one thing we do to try to just help with time savings is one of the reels is designated just for our perimeter fence. And because we do not have a perimeter fence on this particular field. So I just go around the paddock where they're going to be, split it up into sections, and then every day we give them new grass, and every third day I move the shade mobile and the hay cradle. That way it's just distributing where they're putting their manure and spending the bulk of their time. Right now, the bulk of our infrastructure is completely portable, from the reel with the hot wire to the posts. These are just step-in posts. We would like to upgrade to the O'Brien posts because these do break, especially after about 6 months of out in the sun, but it is something that we could afford at the time, especially as we build up the land and the infrastructure that we have here. One thing we did not skimp on were the reels. So these are the 3-to-1 gear ratio reels from Premier One, and have worked absolutely spectacular. These are out in the elements, have long longevity, and have consistent performance, which has been nice, especially if it's raining outside and you're wanting to expedite the move.
So while Farmer Nathan finishes reeling up the rest of the fence, I thought I'd show you what the disturbed ground looks like after it's been rainy here. Some of these holes are 3-4 inches deep where their hooves sank down when it was very wet the other day, and the ground is still very soggy in some places. Some disturbance in the land like this is actually really good. It's essentially tilling, it's aerating. It's compacting in certain areas, it's pushing seeds down into the seed bank. But if you let this continue going on for an extended period of time, you'll end up killing the grass and ending up with a mud pit. So since it's been so rainy here lately, last week we had rain pretty much every single day of the week, totaling to probably about 5 or 6 inches over the whole week. And so the ground, as you can see, got very mucky around here where we had the hay. So we started putting the hay in that wheelbarrow and moving it around the pasture so that we limited the amount of areas that end up mucked up as bad as it is here. But with any of the hay that does get tossed out or spoiled, we dump it all around where they have mucked it up. So the seeds that are in the hay will replant this area, and the hay will help cover it and help it get started again in the spring. Lately they've had access to the shade down at the wood line, so they haven't been using the shade mobile as much, so we have not moved it as frequently with the rain. We are going to have to move it by hand, which is not our favorite thing to do, but it is too wet to put the tractor into the field, so we will shove it on over into their next section. So what Farmer Nathan is setting up in the background there is the new perimeter for the next about almost a week of paddocks. So the largest section of our homestead does not have a perimeter fence yet. So when we want to move the cows to a new section, we have to put in a electric perimeter fence. And then on our daily moves, it's very simple. We just move the line over and they get a new section of grass. But about once a week, sometimes 2 times a week, we have to create a new perimeter. Later this year, we're hoping to put in more of the perimeter around this section of the field, which will make it a whole lot easier to move our cows around. But even doing this method, it is not that big of a hassle. So one thing we did not capture on camera, as I was needed as well, we moved the shade mobile from downhill up to its new location here. And since we couldn't bring the tractor into the very soggy field, we called in help. My sister-in-law came over and she took one side, I took another side of the back, and then Nathan had a chain and was pulling from the front, and we pulled it all the way up the hill here. Thankfully the shade mobile is heavy duty enough to hold up to the cows and being pulled by the tractor, but it's not so heavy that you can't move it by hand when you need to.
So it's definitely posed different troubles that we've had to circumnavigate without having any infrastructure to begin with. But one thing that has helped us with is figure out in particular where we want those cross fences. If we had just thrown up infrastructure without knowing and understanding what our herd needs were, the paddock sizes wouldn't be sized properly. So just being able to take time, observe, especially through your plentiful seasons, but also your lean seasons, will really help us dial in where those are and where our water lines are as well. Well, thank you for joining us for the move with the cows today. If you have any questions, feel free to comment in the comment section below, and we will try to get back to you shortly. We'll see you next time.